evening's Zoom meeting. I see additional attendees are still coming in, so maybe we'll give that a minute or two. Looks as if that's stabilized, so I'll go ahead and kind of get started. First of all, maybe a couple of hints about using Zoom. If you use your speaker view, you'll see the full program screen and be able to see the whole presentation. Your microphone and camera will be off during the presentation, and if you'd like to ask questions, it might be best to wait until the end, but at any rate, please use the Q&A feature, and you should find that on the Zoom toolbar. That might be hidden until you move your cursor to the bottom of the screen, at which time it should that toolbar should pop up, and you should see the Q&A button in the middle of the toolbar. So this evening's presentation is about renewable energy program in the city of Canandaigua. My name's Ben Freevert, and I work for a company called Roctricity. You'll see our logo there at the bottom in the lower right there. And we are partnered with Jewel Community Power to provide administrative services for this program for the city of Canandaigua. And at Roctricity, we're really tasked with doing much of the public outreach and maintaining a relationship with the municipality and providing these presentations and answering questions to help people who maybe want to opt out of the program or learn more about the program at some other time. So yeah, that's what we're doing. And the real announcement here is that the city is launching a community choice aggregation program that will start the 1st of January. It's 100% renewable energy provided to electricity customers in the city. And the presentation here really is about that program and how it works and how it might impact you. So the name of the program is Gateway Community Power. And I point that out so that if you see that name, that you'll know that it relates to this program and you'll know what that's about, and that you can learn more information about the program by going to the program website, gatewaycommunitypower.com. And we'll try to be sure to keep updated information there as the program proceeds. And you can always tune in there to get further information or to get in touch with us. So tonight I want to talk a little bit about what community choice aggregation is. We've held a number of meetings leading up to this point where we've talked about community choice aggregation. So you may have already learned a little bit about this, but you may not have heard anything about it until now. So we're going to tell you a little about what it is, what the benefits are, and the details of the contract that we have very recently negotiated. And you may have seen a letter in the mail that provides some of the information around those contract details, but we'll sort of recap that this evening. We'll talk a little bit about how CCA will affect you and if it'll affect you. What your bill might look like, what changes you might see on your bill if you're participating in the program, and what some of the next steps are, what some of the next things that you'll likely see if you end up participating in the program. So with that, let's start off with what community choice aggregation is. So this is an energy purchase program that was put in place by the Public Service Commission back in April of 2016. And what it does is it allows municipalities throughout the state to aggregate energy demand within their boundaries, within the municipal boundaries, and to take that demand to the electricity supply market and negotiate a bulk purchase. And that bulk purchasing power allows us to really demand the terms of that contract much better than you could do if you went to the market on your own. The program effectively shifts the selection of the default supplier from the state to your municipality. So without CCA in place, if you don't make a decision about who your supplier is, the default is RG&E, your utility. And that's because of state law. However, the state now, through the Public Service Commission, is allowing the municipality to make that choice if they want to. So that's what the City of Canandaigua is doing. They're taking control of that selection of the default supplier. All energy customers within the municipality boundary, within the city, are eligible to participate, but they're not all treated equally. Some are automatically in the program unless they opt out. And that's residents and small businesses. So those meter classifications that are designated for customers who use a lesser amount of electricity. Those customers who use really quite a large amount of electricity, they are what's called demand metered customers. And those customers must opt in to the program if they want to participate. Now, we don't typically see those types of customers opt in because they often have already negotiated terms for their supply. And because of the way their rate is structured, being in the program is not generally beneficial to those customers that use that larger amount of electricity. So what are the benefits of the program? Well, as I alluded to, it allows the municipality to leverage that bulk buying strategy. It's that aggregation of all of the customers within the municipality. And that bulk buying strategy, just like if you go to Costco and you buy in bulk, you generally expect to get a better price. This is a similar strategy. We're able to negotiate from a better position with energy providers. We also project a savings for residents and small businesses. Now, we're not able to guarantee a savings, but we project that there will be a savings because of this bulk buying strategy. And the reason that we can't guarantee a savings is because, as you probably know, RG&E's rate fluctuates from month to month. It goes up and down, just as you see in the little graphic on the right. It goes up and down from month to month. That's the market rate. However, this program, we've negotiated for a longer term fixed rate. This is a 24-month rate. So that long-term fixed rate, it'll stay the same for 24 months while the RG&E rate goes up and down. We very much expect for over the course of the 24 months for that fixed rate to be lower than the average of RG&E's rate. And in fact, it is lower than the average of the previous 24 months of RG&E's rate. But we can't, for any given month, guarantee that it would be lower because RG&E's rate fluctuates, and 1 month RG&E's rate might go down. Again, as I mentioned, it enables the municipality to make a selection of the default supplier. So that selection is happening at a local level as opposed to at the state level. And because this program is focused on 100% renewable energy, we're able to effectively accelerate a transition to renewable energy, which is part of a statewide goals. So some of the details about this contract. The winning bidder in this case was Source Power, and I'll talk a little bit more about Source Power and how they might show up on your bill if you're in the program. And as I mentioned, the program's 24 months long, and at the end of that 24 months, one of two things will happen. If the city decides that maybe they don't think the program's working well enough or don't want to continue with the program, then the program would terminate and residents, customers would go back to having RG&E as their supplier. More likely, and we hope, and I think the city has this sort of view also, that we would, after 24 months, somewhere before that 24 months runs out, we would begin the process of negotiating again to enter into this again, and we would try again to get a very good price for renewable energy. We believe that's the more likely scenario. Again, and you likely have seen this if you received the letter, the price on 100% renewable for this contract is 4.292 cents per kilowatt hour. And while that is only very slightly lower than the previous 12 months RG&E average rate, this is quite a lot lower than what you could get for 100%, a typical customer could get for 100% renewable energy if you went to the marketplace just on your own, which of course you can do. You can go and select your own third-party supplier. But if you did that for 100% renewable, then you would pay quite a bit more. So will this program affect you? Well, as I mentioned, generally, most residential and small business customers are automatically in the program. And in order to get out, you need to take an action and opt out. That treatment is provided for all customers, except for those who are already contracted with a third-party supplier. So if you've made a selection to have a third-party supplier and you see that third-party supplier on your bill now, you will not be automatically in this program. As I mentioned, customers that are billed based on demand, those are the customers that use larger amounts of energy. Those customers will not be automatically in the program. And if you've placed a freeze or a block on your account, and you can do that by calling RG&E too, then you won't be shifted to the new supplier. And finally, Home Energy Assistance Program recipients, per the Public Service Commission regulations, those participants, in order to shift to a third-party supplier, there has to be a guaranteed savings. And as I mentioned and explained, this program cannot guarantee savings. And so we're prohibited from enrolling those participants because of that state regulation. So will your electric bill look different? Yes, it will. You'll no longer see the details of the supply services from RG&E. And your supplier, the new supplier, Source Power, will show up on your bill. And I'm going to go through a couple of some examples of electric bill and show you sort of where you'll see those changes on your electric bill. So first of all, this should look very similar. This is just an example, but it should look very similar to your electric bill. And the first thing I want to point out is that it's really divided into two primary parts. The delivery charges that you see circled in red, they're kind of a little higher. And down below that, you see the supply charges that are detailed. The delivery charges, that's where RG&E really focuses and makes their money. That's to pay RG&E to maintain the grid infrastructure, the wires, the poles, the substations, all of that electrical infrastructure that delivers the electricity to our homes and businesses. The supply charges, on the other hand, that's for the actual electricity, the commodity. And this program will not impact the delivery charges at all, but replaces the supplier with a new supplier. So that's sort of the basis of the program. And so when we proceed, you'll see your bill change a little bit, and that electric supply charges, that detail will disappear. But a little higher in your bill when this happens, the first thing you'll see is in the account summary, you'll see the Source Power charges will show up there as a line item in the account summary. And then back down in the detailed part of the bill, this is where you'll see the supply charges disappear. So you'll still see the delivery charges detailed, but there'll no longer be the supply charges. And those taxes in that section just below, the taxes on the supply charges will disappear also. And then finally, near the end of the bill, under section called Messages, you'll see the energy charge. That's for the charge again for the electricity. So this is your new supply charge. And that'll be provided by Source Power. And you should see the name Source Power somewhere down in this Messages section. So some of the next steps, some of the next things that you as a customer will likely see if you're in the program. The program information letter, hopefully you've already seen. That went out late last week. And so hopefully that's already arrived at your mailbox and you've seen that. It should provide some additional information. There's a frequently asked questions, a couple of pages there that should be helpful also. And this is really your first opportunity to opt out of the program. Those details in the letter will tell you how to opt out of the program. I guess I might also note at this point that you you may well have received a telephone call from RG&E today, or possibly yesterday, but more likely today. And that telephone call, as our understanding, wasn't particularly helpful in explaining the program, but I think pointed you toward the Gateway Community Power website that I mentioned earlier, and provided our telephone number at Roctricity. So that information in the telephone call wasn't. Some people received that call before receiving the letter and were quite confused. If that happened to you, please don't hesitate to call us. We'll be happy to answer questions and explain the program through that channel as well. The next thing you'll see is the new supplier identified on your bill. This will probably start in February because the program begins the 1st of January, and so that energy will be allocated to you starting in January, but you won't see it on a bill until February, because your February bill is really for your January energy consumption. And again, look for the company name Source Power there. And then we'll also be providing more outreach going forward on the community solar component. Now, in the mailing, you should have also seen a flyer, or maybe will see a flyer about the community solar program. This is a separate program, and it doesn't impact your participation in the CCA program. And this program is voluntary. You can opt into this program or not as you learn more about it and make a decision there. So again, the name of the program is Gateway Community Power, and that's not a company, that's just a moniker, a name for the program. And part of the reason that we did that is that aggregation element of the program, it's helpful if we're able to bring additional communities, additional municipalities together also. And so the City of Canandaigua is working with the Village of Victor, in this case, to within Gateway Community Power to maximize your negotiating power, I guess. And so with that, I would see if there are any questions that attendees might have. I do see one question that's been submitted. Does this cost extra beyond my RG&E bill? And the answer to that is no, that it does not. It simply replaces the supply portion of the bill. And sometimes it's a little difficult to compare the rates, because as they're detailed on the RG&E bill, there's the RG&E rate for the supply, there's a merchant function charge, and then there's a tax on the supply. And so you need to add those components together to compare with a third-party supplier rate. So if you're comparing with that 4.292 cents per kilowatt hour that I mentioned earlier, you need to add those several things together on the RG&E bill.
I have another question, Ben. Does this impact budget billing?
So yes, it does impact budget billing, but it doesn't preclude you from continuing or participating in budget billing. So what will happen is when you leave RG&E, that budget billing component with RG&E will be canceled, but you can call Source Power and re-enroll in budget billing, and they will be able to put a budget billing program in place for you also.
If there is no rate increase, then how does this company make money? I'm not sure what this company, maybe it's referring to the administrators.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So yes, we're not here doing this. Well, we kind of are here for free because we're not getting paid yet. We're hopeful to get paid one day. But Joule and Roctricity, the way Joule and Roctricity get paid for their administrative services is that the rate negotiated with the supplier includes our fees within that rate. And our fees are, I always struggle to remember this because it is quite small. It's 8/100ths of a penny per kilowatt hour. And we split that with Joule Community Power. And again, that comes from that supply rate. So it's built into that 4.292 cents that I mentioned earlier. There's no additional charge, and you won't see another line item on your bill for the administrative services.
Can you leave the plan before the end of the 24 months? And if so, is there a penalty?
Excellent question also. Yes, you can leave at any time. You can opt out now because the program started, and you can leave at any time in the 24 months and there is no penalty. In addition, you can rejoin the program with no fee or penalty at any time throughout the program. So you can come and go as you please. It's probably important to note that when you make a change like that, it can take a couple of billing cycles for the change to take effect. Now, if you opt out now, then you won't ever be in the program. So we've got enough time. We've put this in place in such a fashion. We've got enough time that if you opt out now, you won't be included in the program as long as you do it before December 21st. After December 21st, then there's a question. It depends on when your billing cycle starts. But later in the program, if you were to opt out or opt in, it could take a billing cycle or two for that change to take effect. So if you're trying to sort of gauge the market and make changes based on whether the flat rate that we're offering is above or below RG&E's rate, that volatility in RG&E's rate is going to make that very difficult to do. So it's a gamble either way, whether you go in the program or don't go in the program. It's a little bit of a gamble either way. We think that this rate is going to be lower than the average rate for the coming 24 months with RG&E.
Somebody's questioning the automatic enrollment. It seems sort of like being forced to do this.
Well, that's a good point to talk about a little bit too, because we have been getting some calls where people are maybe not happy about that treatment. And so I might elaborate just a little bit more beyond what I said during the presentation. So if you don't make if you call RG&E and you choose, you say, look, I really like to have the lights on in my new house or my new apartment. Can you make that happen? First of all, they cannot say no. They have to turn the lights on for you. That's part of their agreement with the state. And if you do not say, if you do not designate who you'd like to have as your supplier, well, you need to have a default supplier, because if you don't have a default supplier, then you got no electricity. So you have to have some default supplier. And the state has said, well, let's just make that default supplier the utility. And the utility doesn't make money on the supply, they make money on the delivery. So they simply purchase on the market, whatever the market rate is. And that's why the rate fluctuates. What the state has said is, well, let's just we're allowing the municipality to make the decision about who that default supplier is. So, and in this case, and in many cases across the state, the local municipalities have said, well, yes, we do want to make that decision about who the default supplier is. And in Canandaigua's case, they have said, well, we want to choose a default supplier that provides 100% renewable electricity, but we don't want to make it cost people anymore. If we can make it cost them less, that'd be great. And we think that's what we've delivered here. But of course, as I've said, we can't guarantee the savings. So only time will tell for certain there. But that's what allows the city to take control of that default supplier as opposed to the state. And that's what's happening here. Again, you're not forced to participate in the program either. And that's why we're here, is we're trying to get the word out about how the program works and how you can opt out if you so choose. So I hope that addresses the concern.
And there are a couple of ways to opt out: the letter, the phone call, the website.
Right. Yeah, in the letter, you should have also received a postcard in there. So you can just mail that back. And as Melissa mentioned, you can also call us or go right to the Gateway Community Power website and enter your information there and opt out. Good point.
A couple people ask about the solar program. What is the one that are coming up? And if I already have solar, then can I stay in that program, or do I have to leave that one too to be part of the CCA?
Right, good questions. And we haven't, I guess at this presentation, we haven't done a lot to explain about the community solar program. A couple of reasons for that. But what I should be sure and point out is that that program's voluntary, so you can opt into the solar program or not. And there are a couple of things that would preclude you from joining that program though. And the first is if you have rooftop solar. If you already have solar on your roof and it's grid connected and net metered, then you cannot join a community solar program, whether it's the one associated with Gateway Community Power or some other one. Similarly, if you're already enrolled in a community solar program with another company, there are companies out there offering the community solar option, and plenty of people have signed up for those programs. They're good programs. But you can't be in two of them at once. So if you're in one of those programs, you cannot also join the Gateway Community Power Community Solar Program. There is some benefit to the municipality from that program, the Gateway Community Power Community Solar Program. If you sign up for that, it contributes to a sustainability fund that's being offered by the developer of that community solar, Source Power. And those monies go into a sustainability fund, and the City of Canandaigua has been very progressive in pursuing sustainability efforts, particularly with renewable energy. And so those funds then we hope will accumulate and help the city to achieve some of the goals that they've set for sustainability. So that's a very helpful element, I think.
You've mentioned renewable power several times. Can you elaborate more on what is renewable power?
Yeah, but I'll preface that with, stop me, Melissa, if I get carried away. I have a bit of a passion for that. So, right. So renewable energy is energy that comes from those sources that really are either endless in supply or nearly so. So solar energy. I think for practical purposes, we can count on that being an endless supply of energy. And because the wind really comes from the energy produced by the sun, wind is also a renewable source. Geothermal is generally regarded as a renewable source of energy, although you could contest that, I suppose. So they're hydroelectric, because it similarly is viewed as an endless supply, because that cycle of water will continue. Again, there's a argument against that, but that's generally falls into the category of renewable. An example of one that doesn't, but in some views are good from a climate change standpoint. An example there would be nuclear. Nuclear doesn't generally, in producing the energy, doesn't generally create greenhouse gas emissions. However, it is not viewed as a renewable source, just a clean carbon-free source. Fossil fuels, definitely not a renewable source, as those sources of energy are finite and limited, and are causing some other problems as well. But I hope that clears up that question at least well enough.
I have seen some gas touted as renewable if it comes off of landfill. And I hope landfill isn't renewable, but that's an odd one that gets funny names.
Yeah, and certainly any of these, you know, aside maybe from solar and wind, could create a disagreement, I guess, somewhere, and be argued by some. And we're not, we're maybe getting in the weeds just a little bit.
Okay. Source Power is the company that's providing the power here. They are based in New York City. Are they just concerned about New York City area? Are they working around the state, or why would they care about us?
Yeah, that's a good point. We in shopping for a supplier for the City of Canandaigua for this program, that was not one of the concerns. That was not one of the terms that was part of this agreement, because who is looking out for you is Roctricity and Joule Community Power. So we're going to that marketplace and looking out for the customers in this area, in the greater Rochester with some of the other programs, and the Finger Lakes area, and in particular the City of Canandaigua. So it's good to have a third party between you and the supplier, for partly for that reason, and partly the history of some of the energy supply market players is fraught with some challenging examples of those companies taking advantage of customers. So it's a good point to make, and I think that I can't tell you that Source Power is necessarily looking out for your best interests, but Joule Community Power is holding their feet to the fire and will do so. We don't have any reason to believe that they won't be a perfectly good supplier, a perfectly good player, but we will be monitoring that very closely and make sure that they're abiding by the contract terms and playing by the rules.
Somebody asks about opting out. Does that mean my power goes out? Can you discuss the difference between the grid RG&E power supply and the renewable power supply?
Yeah, right. Good question. No, your power won't go out. And in fact, if you opt into this program and have a different supplier, and that won't have any effect on whether or not you might have a power outage. Now, you still might have a power outage as a result of a storm or something like that. And in that event, you would still call RG&E and tell them about that power outage, and they would do their normal services to try to quickly restore your power. So it won't impact the service or whether or not you have power outages. And that's because, as I mentioned earlier, RG&E really, that's really their primary task, is taking care of the infrastructure that gets the power to your house. And the supply portion, on the other hand, is for the commodity. And RG&E is responsible to get electricity to your house, no matter your arrangement for the supply.
Sometimes I explain the grid as a big bathtub or a big lake that all the different suppliers put power in, and RG&E is responsible for keeping that full and always allowing you to be able to take out the power that you want. It's always there.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Yeah, and the accounting really takes place on the other end, where the electricity, or the bathwater in Melissa's analogy, comes into the pool.
Why do we have a secondary company if the power is coming into my house? I guess that's again another distinction between the power supplier and the power delivery. Yeah.
So since the electricity markets were deregulated back in the 1990s, you've had the choice to choose a third-party supplier, and the reason that that was done was to try to increase competition in the supply market portion of the electric grid. So, and I suppose that carries through here too, that you have the option to choose a third party in order to pursue something like price or 100% renewable, or that's sort of the framework that makes that third party option a possibility. Now, if you stay with RG&E, then you don't have a third party to deal with if that's a concern for you. But you should know that RG&E is simply buying the electricity from one third party or another. I mean, they're buying it on the electricity supply markets from a variety of third parties, but they're acting on your behalf to procure supply for you. I hope that answers the question.
I don't see any more questions coming up. We can mention that anybody who wants to watch this again or tell your friends about it can find this recording on Gateway Community Power Facebook.
Well, that's a good point. And yeah, we'll post a recording of this presentation, including the Q&A. Yeah, as Melissa mentioned, on the Gateway Community Power Facebook page. And also Roctricity has a YouTube channel. You can find that if you search on YouTube, and you can see, you'll be able to see this presentation. It'll take a day or two to get it posted there, but you'll be able to see some of the other presentations about similar programs in the area if that's of interest. So I guess if there aren't any other questions, we'll wrap it up for tonight. Thank you very much for tuning in. And again, you can get in touch with us either by calling us at our number there on the screen, 585-244-0244, or you can email us at info@roctricity.com. Again, thank you, and have a good evening.